David Toulis, near is better than far here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County. Small is better than big, simple than complex, and in the footnotes, it's 5-point type in Helvetica font, the Swiss font, the neutral font. We read that personal is better than corporate and physical than abstract. I say the Swiss font because it doesn't have serif. The serif in typography is the little shoe or the little blade, if you will, that hangs on the ends of many letters as a kind of a decoration. And I like Helvetica font because it doesn't have those little blades on the ends, say of the letter C or the letter H. If you have a capital H, you would have 4 of them, 4 little blades. And the reason I don't like those things on there is because they cut. And when city councils and general assemblies write streams of words that are going to become ordinances or statutes or laws, they always have the font that has the little blades on it, and they do that. Why? Because they are compulsory words. And my thinking is, let's not have compulsory words written by men anymore. Let's have compulsory words written only by God. And the words that men say, let them have less and less compulsion. So let's have fewer and fewer books published that have compelling, compulsory, coercive, mandatory, mandating words in them, and let it all be Helvetica font, so that it's all voluntary, it's all agreeable, it's under contract, perhaps it is in the free market, and not demanding of performance as these words and pages and pages and pages of rules are from the good people, right? In Washington, with their CFRs, their Code of Federal Regulations, and their statute books of U.S. codes, et cetera, all compelling and all very, very urgent, and all we have to be sure about this, all for the public good, all for the health, safety, welfare, and morals of the people of the country, and here in Tennessee, the people of our state. And because I'm wanting there to be more liberty, I want there to be fewer compelling arguments that force people to do things. I think there should be fewer and fewer of those. And I would like to suggest that the human progress, there is a theory of human progress only in Christianity. It's the only system of thought and practice in life that has one. There is the promise that as we get toward the last day, there'll be fewer wars, fewer acts of violence, fewer frauds, fewer inflations, there won't be any jails, of course. Fewer police. There'll be no police in the last days at all. There'll be private. There'll be arrangements where there is a law that controls, but it will be rarely used. And why is that? Well, because people will be increasingly self-governing. They'll have government of themselves more and more, and they'll need external government where men are over other men. They'll need that less and less. And in view here, of course, is the fruit of the gospel that a lot of people in Chattanooga heard about yesterday at their churches. Though I think probably many sermons were made yesterday that presuppose just the opposite view of the future. There's not progress. You want to call? Yeah, the number is 800-8949. 800-8949 is the number. Now, and because of the different, there are different wings, you might say, of Christianity, and there's really only just one that has an optimistic perspective. It's called an optimistic eschatology, and that is post-millennialism, which is what the reformers had, and the apostles had, and the early church had in spades, where there is a promise that there will be less and less of the world that's not under God's government. And of course, God governs through self-government, right? If you believe in self-government, you end up not needing the state at all. If everyone in East Ridge governs himself, then we don't need an ordinance book. We don't need a Tennessee Code annotated. We don't need anything like that at all, because there's no injury being done anywhere. There's no fraud. There's no lying. There's no assaults. There are no wife beatings. There are no neglected children. And that is because dads and moms and owners and neighbors are all governing themselves pursuant to God's law, right? Which means that everyone is just, right? And we have the guarantee that we'll always have the poor with us and we'll have the sin problem until the last day. That's a certainty. I think over time, the Bible promises that over time there'll be less and less need for state violence, less and less need for monarchies and administrative surveillance systems, war machinery, and the like. That's all kind of going to become passé as men improve. Now, of course, the problem here is that evolution promised the same thing, but evolution and the superiority of the races program of Charles Darwin that did not create progress, but that was actually a great regression as against Christian civilization. So we've had, and that hit in 1858, I think, is when the book came out, and we've had a great gap and a great loss in liberty and prosperity since that time. Though there have been, of course, many advantages thanks to American ingenuity and the free market that we have still in many ways. Now, I want to the number is 800-8949, 800-8949. I've been for 20 years a deacon in a small Presbyterian church, and as I have lived my life as a writer and journalist and blogger and a defender of liberty, you might say Dr. Constitution in Chattanooga. I try to understand the Constitution and try to defend its concepts. I'm finding myself in a bit of trouble. Now, the trouble I have is with a statute, and the statute creates a crime. The crime is called UPL, unlicensed practice of law. Now, for some time, I've been proposing that Christian people, that the church or churches in Chattanooga, there are 700 of them, that they think for one moment, maybe one person or maybe 5 people among these 700 churches would think of a service that they could provide to lost people who are not in the church, but who have a legal problem, right? People who are charged with crimes, people who have civil problems, they're being evicted, people who have struggles getting bills paid, and who maybe are involved in wrongs that are civil actions. And these Christian people in these 700 churches, maybe 5 people, a big number compared to other areas of the country, 5 people concerned about justice. And what they agree to do is look out for people who are being charged and offer their assistance. And what they would be doing would be providing a legal service. Now, this legal service by a deacon who is not a licensed attorney is forbidden. It's forbidden in the UPL statute, which is called Unlicensed Practice of Law, 23-3-101. Now, Chris Helton is a city court judge in East Ridge, and not too long ago, I was making an effort to assist a woman, let's just call her Christine, who works in a restaurant. And the service I was going to give her was to speak on her behalf and to get her out from under a criminal charge, the charge was that she didn't have a driver's license and was being charged for driving unrevoked. Now, how did she not ever apply for a driver's license but be charged with driving unrevoked is a kind of a mystery. And I can explain that because there's a bit of administrative chicanery going on in the Department of Safety in Nashville. And that's how that came about. But anyway, she was charged with driving unrevoked, though she never had a license, because she says that the test kept changing and she just couldn't keep up with the changes and just couldn't answer the questions. And so she kept failing. And in the afternoon that I stood next to her before Judge Helton, he shot me down. He said, "Well, you can't help her. You just have to sit down. She can have the help only of a licensed attorney." I said, "Well, Your Honor, I'm looking out for her interests. I'm not practicing law. I'm not a licensee, but I'm not. There's no consideration given for my service to her. It's an act of mercy, an act of Christian charity to help her, since I know about this issue of the traffic statute." And well, he would have none of it. And so he said, "Well, she has a right to an attorney. She has well, on the other side of that issue, which seems to be decided in the judge's favor, is the right to have the counsel of your choice. I'd say it's an absolute right in a criminal matter. And in the Tennessee Constitution, you have a right to be heard by yourself and your counsel. It does not, the word counsel doesn't mean that you have to have a member of the judiciary to serve you, right? That's to say a lawyer. Lawyers are members of the judicial branch. They're all servants of the court, and they're sort of functionaries of the law, and the how the law is argued and debated on particular fact cases, right? Particular cases show conflict, and the law is there to be understood by the results, and the attorney is there to defend one side or the other, and the judge, of course, decides what is the right thing in a particular case. And so my problem is I want to help people like I want to help you. In fact, I always say, I'm here to help you, my listener, and whatever your problems are, just talk with me about your problems, and let's see if we can at least work toward a solution of some kind, because there are solutions, and many of them are not going to be given to you by the attorneys. The attorneys will not give them to you. Judge Helton said, well, she needs to have an attorney. Well, is she going to get a public defender's office for this kind of infraction? Which I think when I estimated the total charges that she could face are about almost $500. A poor woman who can't afford that. She has 2 teenage daughters, happens to be African American, not very well spoken, and doesn't really know what she's facing. So I was told, no, you cannot assist her. And Judge Helton appears to be right. And because and you can read the story, by the way, at East Ridge News Online. East Ridge News Online. Just do a search for my name, Tulis, Tulis, and the headline is something. Helton tells Tulis to sit down in traffic case. The problem is that you have a guild and a cartel. The cartel is the lawyer cartel, and they think that these lawyers have got this. Get this, they wrote the statute, right? Their members in the General Assembly have had the statute written in the favor of their unique authority to practice law. And the law, so there are a couple of definitions. Let me just tell you what they are. The first one is law business, is the advising or counseling of for money of any person on a secular law. And the statute says secular law because there's God's law, right? And who deals with that? That's right. That's the minister. The minister of the gospel at your church should be a specialist in God's law. He should be a barrister for the law of God. That's implied in the statute. Of course, we know that most Christian pastors know absolutely nothing about the law of God, and are not. This is David Tulis on the air at 92.7 FM, and so the law business is taking money and you're providing a service, and that would be you're drawing up documents, papers, or instruments affecting a right, a secular right, and you're doing that to help someone maintain their property rights. Okay, got that? So the statute goes on down to what is the practice of law. Now, here is where it got me. Okay, I'd say evidently I was trying to be involved in the practice of law. If you just go by this definition, the practice of law means the appearance as an advocate in a representative capacity, or the drawing of papers. Okay, so there I was proposing to represent Christina and to speak for her on her matter and to show that she was being wrongly charged. And I didn't, of course, even get to the answer that I had. But also, it's not just appearing as an advocate, but drawing papers, pleadings, or documents or the performance of any act in such capacity in a proceeding before a body such as a court. So there you have it. If I'm drawing papers for someone to help that person out, that is conceivably chargeable as a misdemeanor in Tennessee. And that really troubles me. And here's why. What is it when the Christian church in Chattanooga finally wakes up? Its deacons and its members are going to say, we have to help the poor who are being unjustly treated. Now, 10 years from now, or let's say 15 years from now, when I'm gone from the scene, let's say there's a reformation that takes place and the church suddenly wakes up and is self-consciously aware of God's laws and how men's laws need to be in conformity to God's laws, right? And so let's say that 15 years from now, we still have Title 55 plaguing the poor and plaguing people like you. And I hope it doesn't take that long for Title 55 to be properly enforced, but I'll work my best to make it happen. But let's just say I've gone from the scene and it hasn't happened, and we still have the police state. on every highway and every byway, from the sheriff's department, Jim Hammond, all the way down to David Roddy, enforcing a statute unconstitutionally and illegally in an ultra virus way. Well, 15 years from now, when I'm gone and the churches are waking up, they're going to deal with this statute, because this statute says you, as a deacon, cannot help someone draw up his papers, deal with his pleadings, figure out the right motions, figure out what the exhibits are, check the statute, write a memorandum, or meet with a judge. You can't. It's forbidden. So how can Christian people who are concerned about justice help people practically? As I'm trying to help Mrs. Christina, how can we help practically when we have this statute in view? And Chris Helton seems to be citing the statute correctly, though he didn't actually cite it by name. He just said you can't practice law to me, and it seems like he's right. I can't practice law because writing up the papers that I had in my folder is part of that, and that's a practice of law, and that's forbidden. So what is a person to do? How can a person show grace and mercy to someone in an abusive legal situation put there by the East Ridge police in the venue of a court which does not recognize the proper scope of the statute? What I'm thinking, here's what I'm thinking. Well, let me ask you what you think. 800-8949, 800-8949 is the number to call me. Now, maybe, if we want to change problems to talk about something else, well, let's do that. Okay. We can certainly talk about something else, but here's the short form of what I'm trying to say. UPL is a threat to Christian charity. UPL is a threat to Christian charity, because Christian charity should be taking place in terms of the law and the abuse of the law and in the law by the state of the people. That's what happened. The whole fellowship of the finger problem, right? The blue problem, where the fellowship is comprised of the officer and the district attorney working mischief against common people. Many of the crimes are not crimes at all, and many of them are commercial in nature. They're commercial violations aimed against people who are not involved in a commercial activity, and that is the Title 55 abuse, which affected Diana Watt in the arrest the other day. She was halted. The woman dragged from her car. Number two, woman of color victim of regular, routine, tedious, boring police work in Helena County. And yeah, we need more videos. We sure do. You, my listener, by the way, are my reporter. You are my eyes and ears on the road. I can be in one or two places at a time. Well, really just one. But you're there when I'm not there, okay? And you with your smartphone are going to make a record of good things happening in Chattanooga, right? Laws being upheld, peace being brought. You keep a record of that. And policemen are glad that you're there as a witness. They're always in danger, and so they're glad that they can have you make a record of their encounter with some person in a car, because it's often traffic stops where people are angry, and cops often are shot. It often happens. In fact, there's a story just this morning, I think, about that very thing that I don't have the details in front of me, but we have violent traffic stops. Again, traffic stops occurring between officers who are enforcing the commercial statute and people who are not commercial users. I think Title 55 reform, the double nickel reform, will save a lot of encounters between officers whose lives are valuable and important and members of the public who don't need to see those officers at all because they're not involved in commercial activity. So that is a reform ahead. And my goal as a Christian here on Monday, enjoying my day of rest yesterday, or having enjoyed my day of rest yesterday, my goal is to think into the future. How can we have acts of mercy by knowledgeable and caring men who are not attorneys, don't make a living doing that, but just like law. They like law. They like the study of law. I read Gibson's Suits and Chancery in the bathroom. Okay. And I try to read legal articles and court cases as I can by God's grace. And UPL is a threat to charity. It's a threat to charity. And in fact, I sent an email this morning after having read the statute to Robbie Holt at North Shore Fellowship. And I said, Robbie, I think the idea that we have of a ministry to the poor, especially ministry to the abused poor, right? There are poor people in court all the time, but there's a category that's there abusively, right? we can make major changes if we can help them and use their cases to overturn the machine. The machine operates against the poor blindly, leviathanesquely, right? Not thinking about their souls at all, not caring about them at all. It's just a machinery that has to run. It runs automatically against them and against everybody else. But the poor, they can't withstand it, and they are ruined routinely, especially under the traffic statute. They're routinely ruined. And I'm thinking of Tiffany McGuinn with her $14,000 in unpaid court debt, and she still has a revoked driver's license. The poor thing works in a restaurant. We need to help people like that. So how do we do it? If we can't draw up papers or represent that person, because that's a violation of the UPL statute, the unlicensed practice of law statute. I think it's a matter of prayer for some people, and I think it's a matter of action for others. What can we do to bring relief? David Toulis, Nougat Radio 92.7, 800-8949.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
Flash flooding swept away cars in downtown Chattanooga over the weekend. East 20th Street proved